other stories from the news today. Reince Priebus says that the White House, this is the headline over The Guardian, an article by Martin Pengele. Reince Priebus says White House is looking to change libel laws, which would require deleting the First Amendment from the Constitution. Yes, they're talking about it. Priebus was on ABC's This Week over the weekend. He says, I think it's something that we've looked at. How that gets executed and whether that goes anywhere is a different story. Trump has repeatedly said he wishes he could sue newspapers that say things about him he doesn't like. The last president we had who did that was John Adams. And John Adams actually shut down over 20 newspapers because they said things he didn't like. He put nearly 20 newspaper publishers in prison. The very first one was Benjamin Franklin Bach. Ben Franklin's grandson, who published a newspaper out of Massachusetts called the Aurora. And President Adams shut it down because Ben Franklin Bach wrote an editorial calling him old, toothless, querulous, and balding. Seriously. And for that, John Adams shut down his newspaper and threw him in jail. He threw Matthew Lyon in jail, who was the congressman from Vermont. And he threw him in jail because Matthew Lyon stood up on the floor of the House, and while Roger Griswold, who was the congressman from Connecticut at the time, was giving this speech, he was pontificating about the wonders of something or other, and Matthew Lyon got up and said, "You're just here to serve the rich." And, of course, you know, Griswold was a Federalist, and Lyon, who was aligned with John Adams, and Lyons was a anti-Federalist, what they called by that point in time. I think that they were still called anti-Federalists at that point, but within a year or two, they called them the Democratic Republicans. This was the beginning of the modern Democratic Party. And Matthew Lyon said, "You're just in it with the rich. It's, you know, why you're here. You're just representing the interests of the rich." Keep in mind, this was 1798. And Roger Griswold came after him with a poker. This was in the, you know, in the Senate, in the House rather, and they had fireplaces there to warm it. He grabbed a poker out of the fireplace to come across Matthew Lyon. Matthew Lyon grabbed another poker, and these guys are like beating each other with pokers from the fireplace. And the sergeant-at-arms has them, you know, separated, but they chose to. They didn't arrest Griswold. They arrested Matthew Lyon, and John Adams sent him off to jail in Vergennes, Vermont. He literally sent him back to his home state to sit in an unheated jail cell. This was in the winter, in an unheated jail cell where this was in, I think this happened in like September, October, and in November, Matthew Lyon, from his jail cell, ran for re-election and won. And so, I mean, but that was the last time we had a president who actually wanted to shut down newspapers, was John Adams. He was, you know, he was that era's conservative. I know there's been massive attempts to whitewash him, particularly when George W. Bush became president, because John Adams' son, John Quincy Adams, also became president. So there was this whole let's fetish John Adams thing. But if you read any really good histories, it was a pretty ugly presidency in many regards. He was a good man before that. I mean, he defended the British soldier who killed a colonist, and you know, John Adams had a lot of principles. But after that point, after 1798, when Thomas Jefferson was his vice president, the day that Adams signed the Alien and Sedition Act, which allowed him to shut down newspapers, Jefferson left town in protest, and the two never spoke in person again. They later, in their dotage, in their older years, in the 1820s, I think it was Ben Rush, was a friend of both of them. He was a very close friend of Jefferson's. He got them corresponding, and their correspondence is like something for the ages. And I think that they were both writing it, essentially trying to write history, each trying to portray himself well in history. But it was no longer a fight. It was you know, old friends again, and it's remarkable stuff. Just reading the Jefferson Adams letters from the 1820s is really worth going out of your way. It's really worth the time. But the net right now is that we've got another John Adams in the White House. Only this guy doesn't have anything like the statesmanship of John Adams. John Adams, you know, helped write the Constitution. I mean, you know, edited the Declaration of Independence, cared about the future of his nation. and believed in government as a force for good. It's why he helped create this government. Donald Trump, I would say, fails on all those counts.